Here's just a peanut butter cookie, so if you die, we know how.
Ah, okay. Good to know we have that security blanket there.
That really covers our asses in case we get sued.
In case we get sued. Keyword is we.
Hello and welcome to episode, 6? Yeah, 6 of Two Other Guys. I'm Jeffrey, the first guy.
I'm Eli, the second guy this time. Haha, we bamboozled ya.
Comedy.
So before we jump into this week's episode and the topic for this week, Jeffrey, you had some news to go over?
Yeah, there's a couple things in news. Nothing groundbreaking. One little Pokemon Go update for you. It's not live yet, but maybe by the time this episode goes out, Niantic is working on making raids like temporarily be location independent in a sense, so that you don't have to leave your house to do raids with the virus.
Wonder how they're gonna do that.
Yeah, I have no idea. My only interest is, does that mean we can do raids from different states together?
That would be pretty sick. That'd be a lot of fun.
Because that way we can get Eli some legendaries, because he doesn't have any.
I don't play the game that much.
But if I get, 3 people together, we can all just sit around and do it, and then Eli finally get some good teams together. Eli, I think my second account is almost about to outlevel yours.
I haven't opened the game in a week.
Right now it's all, electrodes and funguses.
Yeah, I have both of those. I mean, the main reason I play Pokemon Go is the collectivity aspect.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. That's what I do. Though
yeah.
I also want the good IVs.
Yeah, I mean, I have one max IV Pokemon, and that's a Graveler. And a Lowland Graveler.
There's also a lot of Ghastlies out, which are nice because you can trade them and they evolve.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Gengars. I have a Gengar. Pretty good one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I got Landorus by doing the battle from a battle reward, so I don't even have to do that raid anymore.
Well, la-di-doo. Good job.
Of course, I don't really need more ground types, but I didn't get Thundurus, which is the actual one I wanted because it has electric moves, which I don't have enough of.
Yeah, I mostly depend on... I have one really good Jolteon that I just rely on for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have a Raichu that's decent.
Yeah, I got into Electivire, but it doesn't have the right movesets, and I got Ryoku, or the
Raikou?
dog. Yeah, Raikou. I just keep changing his name into a streaming box.
Streaming box?
A Roku.
Oh, a Roku. That was a good one.
So, this is not, new news, but did you see that the Lego Mario set?
Yes, I did see that. That was really interesting. But part of me also kind of doesn't care.
Yeah, I don't really care. I don't like the way they're doing it. I don't like it when Lego just makes their new pieces to do things, and this just looks full of that kind of stuff. And it's it's battery powered. It's strange.
It seems very novel to me, but it doesn't really seem like classic Lego, you know?
Yeah, I really just... See, I would have much preferred if it was just, minifigure. I'm looking just at a freeze frame of the trailer, which I'll link in the description. And Koopa Troopa and Bowser Jr.'s, faces are just done by stickers, and they're really, big and blocky. And I feel like I would have much preferred it if, Mario and the other human characters were minifigures, and then, a Goomba was just, built out of a couple little pieces. I would have preferred that.
Yeah, I think most people would have, but, it's neat, whatever it is. It's nice to see that kind of collaboration going out. I think it's really a good step forward for both Nintendo and Lego as a whole, because it'll definitely just attract kids to both brands, and that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, so, I don't know, I won't, even though these are, my two favorite, toy brands, I don't think I'll buy these.
I wasn't planning on it either. I could tell from the second I saw it, it was more directed towards little kids rather than collectors.
I mean, it does have a cool modern interactive play. I think that it's I'm looking at it now, and I think because the Mario thing that you jump around actually scans things on this obstacle course you make for it, which to me is just doesn't make a lot of sense at this point. If you're playing with it, because you have to pretend you're going through an obstacle course, but you could just move Mario from the beginning to the end immediately. It's a weird level of suspending your disbelief you need to have.
Imagination.
But Mario must have a camera in his asshole because on all on the item blocks and all these things that it showed that would have some digital effect, because Mario has like a little screen on him to show like you got coins or you got a power up, or sometimes he plays like sounds. They have QR code stickers that are on different parts of the course that I guess it scans.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's intuitive, certainly, I think.
I mean, so it's a clever, like, look at this, like, hybrid modern maker themed ish design. But then I'm here being like, but it doesn't look cool.
Well, I don't think they're trying to market it towards us, so I'm not exactly mad about it.
No, I guess it's saving me money.
Yeah. Which we need
Speaking
to
of Mario,
do a little bit these days.
Speaking of Mario, you might know more about this than me because I don't really follow much of the rumor mill, but apparently a whole bunch of Mario games are getting re-released this year.
Yeah, I heard about that. It was leaked to see Mario 64 and Mario Galaxy were both getting complete remasters for the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Which is exciting, in my opinion. I would love to play those games again, especially if they were fully remastered. As long as they keep the aspects of the original games that made them great, I think that would be really, really cool.
I have a couple articles that I was looking at just briefly to see what the rumor is, and it looks like we have remasters of Super Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy, and then in 2020, new installments of Paper Mario and a deluxe version of Super Mario 3D World. Which all of these have different levels of believability.
Yeah, I would love to see a remake of Super Mario Sunshine. That would be amazing, in my opinion, because that's one of my favorite like open world Mario games, because that was probably the first one that I played on the GameCube. I played Super Mario 64 obviously later in life, and I played it, still haven't finished it, never really played it on my own. And then Mario Galaxy was the first Mario game that I ever like fully finished, like as close as I can get to 100%ing a game like that, was the first Mario Galaxy game.
Yeah, I don't think Mario Galaxy to me, even though it's a 2007 game, still looks great. I don't know like what you need to like remaster in a sense. Like if that was just a digital game you could download on the Switch, I think that'd make a lot of people happy.
Yeah, I mean like, or if they just released a box with all the games, like one cartridge with all the games together, I think that would be amazing.
They're probably small enough at this point.
Unless they were like completely remastering Sunshine and 64, in which case the graphical limitations would be akin to Odyssey.
I mean, I would love that for Super Mario 64. I would play the heck out of that.
I would love that for Sunshine. So I think if these rumors are true, I think that would be a huge moneymaker for Nintendo. They're really cashing in on the nostalgia with those. If they fully remaster the games, that would be a huge nostalgia cash, and they would make a lot of money.
Oh, I mean, of course it would make a ton of money. I mean, didn't we, wasn't I just talking about in the last episode how we needed some, like, there's something missing for this year, and it's like, just throw us another Mario thing. Well, now there's a lot of Mario things.
There you go. You know, but at the end of the day, rumors are rumors. I'd take it with a pinch of salt, and I'd be like, oh, this would be really cool if it happened, but I'm not holding my breath for it.
Yeah, like, I just like the sentence, like, this is a single sentence on an article. Nintendo will also release several other Mario titles in 2020, including a new installment in the Paper Mario series and a deluxe version of 2013 Super Mario 3D World. And my response to that is, this sentence has two completely different topics with, like, opposite levels of plausibility.
I mean, Nintendo has hundreds upon hundreds of devs. You know, it wouldn't surprise me that they've been working on these projects for a while in secret. I mean, we didn't know Byleth was coming out, and we got fucking Byleth.
Yeah, but, like, okay, putting 3D World on the Switch, yeah, seems basically inevitable. New Paper Mario? Well, hold on, wait a second.
I mean, the last Paper Mario game we got was left a lot to be desired.
Yeah, but it wasn't that long ago either.
Well, it's for the 3DS and, like, what?
No, it wasn't. There's Color Splash.
Oh, I forgot about that game entirely. I was thinking it's Superstar.
Yeah, everybody forgot about that game.
Because it was bad.
Color Splash was it was a 2016 Wii U game. That's why it was forgotten.
Oh.
It's actually the writing is apparently really good. I've played a little bit of it. It just didn't grip me. And again, like I don't know. I didn't hate Sticker Star, but
The gameplay and
also
mechanics were annoying. I thought like it was a fun game, but I was annoyed by a lot of the mechanics and like, oh, you need this sticker to go do the thing, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how to get the sticker, and you are giving me no hints as to how to do it.
yeah, not the best like designed game in the world. I remember playing that entire game with a walkthrough.
Yeah, I had to look up so many walkthroughs, and I hate doing that. I really hate doing that.
Yeah, it's not the best designed game, but I had a fun time with it. And I think colors, but like I also had never played any of the other ones, and I liked Thousand Year Door a lot, though I've only played through like a third of the game, and that was like in one sitting 4 or 5 years ago.
I mean, I've watched the Game Grumps play Thousand Year Door, and I've played quite a bit of the game myself, and I adore that game. It's so well written. The gameplay is fun and dynamic, and the bosses are really fun designs. And you know, I love Thousand Year Door. It was a great game.
Well, some of these rumors are claiming specifically it'll be a return to form, you know, Thousand Year Door style Paper Mario, and I don't even understand where that rumor gets made from. A lot of this stuff is tied in specifically to the Universal Park that's coming out, and all these other like Mario things that are coming out this year, like the Legos that we were just talking about. But I feel like we get one of these every, like, wasn't this exact same thing teased 5 years ago for the 30th anniversary, and all we got was like, well, nothing.
I don't know. I can't remember, to be honest with you.
I don't remember any 2015 Mario games.
I don't either.
Well, there you go.
There's your answer. But, you know, maybe because they didn't do anything for the 30th, maybe they're trying to go all out for the 35th. Wouldn't surprise me.
Maybe.
Well, there also... Wasn't that around the time the Wii U was a thing? And the Wii U was already flopping? 2015?
Yes, it was.
But with the success of the Switch, now would be the time to cash in.
I mean, yeah, but you could have also made the argument maybe releasing all these games in the Wii U might have made people buy a Wii U. I don't know.
What made people buy a Wii U was Smash 4. And even still, people didn't buy a Wii U.
Well, yeah. Look, there's plenty of things that we could dive a whole lot into why the Wii U didn't work. I'm just saying that this is a rumor.
Yeah.
Anyway, you might get one of these things, you might get none of them, you might get all of them.
Yeah. It's like the speculation for the first Fighters Pass, which was they got 2 characters, the rest were entirely wrong.
Which 2 did they guess correctly?
Hero and Banjo.
Okay, so the two characters that people thought were coming anyway.
Well, no, nobody knew Hero was coming until it was leaked.
Yeah, but
Banjo was like a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, Hero is a no-brainer if you live in Japan.
Yeah, but like Joker, so there was a leak that predicted Terry, and then nobody knew that it was basically the 2 oddballs were Joker and Byleth. Everyone else was predicted in a leak.
I mean, again, my thing with leaks is just I can predict anything in a leak as long as you have enough people saying different things. Like I could leak tomorrow that something's happening, and then when it and I'd have no idea. But if I predicted it right, oh, the leaks got it.
The thing is about that, Jeffrey, is that especially when a lot of credible leakers get multiple things in a row right, that's the thing you got to watch out for. And we got Terry, who nobody knew was coming from a bunch of credible leakers, so therefore they proved their reputation again. Nobody saw Terry coming.
I still don't. I will never believe any leaker. Like, I'll just be like, okay, that's a good idea.
I mean, like I said before, if it's a leak or a rumor, I take it with a pinch of salt, but it depends on the size of that pinch of salt, where it's coming from.
Well, I'm just saying that these, even though, who are these leaked by? It said initially these were leaked by, well, Eurogamer reported a follow-up, but it looks like the leak was VentureBeat. I recognize the name, but I
recognize the name as well.
I don't know what that means, but yeah, here's your grain of salt on Mario, that, like, we've been predicting all of these things for so long and they've never happened. So they could happen.
Yeah, well, a leak is a leak is a leak is a rumor. I just follow leaks for fun.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. I would love for I think anyone would like more of this, but who's to say?
Who's to
Lastly,
say?
before we get
I
into
can't.
our main topic, The Last of Us Part 2 has been indefinitely delayed.
That was a heartbreaker for me. That was a total heartbreaker. I mean,
But
it gives me more time to buy a
You can't even play
PS5.
the game. You can't even play the game.
Yeah, I know.
don't-
I want to play it soon, and now I can't.
But you don't have a console to play it on.
I would buy the console. I like the PlayStations. They're good consoles. They have a lot of really great titles that I haven't played yet.
So you're just gonna. So this was what you're gonna buy a place. You're just buy it now.
I was gonna buy a PlayStation. Well, now we know it's gonna come for the PS5, and once we get more details on the backwards compatibility of the PS5, I'll probably get a PS5 so I can play like Spider-Man and oh god, what were some of the other really great PS4 titles?
Though they didn't say that it was to. There's a lot of like statements from Sony and Naughty Dog, and they didn't say that it had anything to do with the PS5. It was about Corona.
Yeah, I know, but chances are if it's indefinitely delayed, then the PS5 will come out hopefully soon around the release, and then I'd probably, depending on the backwards compatibility situation, because I do have a bunch of PS3 games, I'll make a judgment call off of that, and
Well,
whether or not Last of Us will be available for the PS4.
I don't think that it's being indefinitely delayed so that it can reach the PS5. I think it's being indefinitely delayed because coronavirus is an indefinite thing that's happening.
I'm aware of this fact. I am fully aware of this fact, Jeffrey. I'm just explaining kind of like another perspective on the situation that might, actually drive me to buy a product if that product is closer to the release of it.
Well, the follow-up question is, does the PS5 release this year because of this virus? Who knows?
Who knows if anything is releasing this year because of this virus?
Well, Naughty Dog did state that for some development update that they are nearly done in development and in the midst of fixing our final bugs. So this game is basically done, and they're crediting that they couldn't launch The Last of Us Part 2 to our satisfaction, and they want to make sure that everyone gets to play the game around the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think it's because of probably distribution abilities, and I think that I don't know what drives the rules on like digital versus physical game releases, but I could easily see this being a situation where if whoever ups in these companies are saying we need to have a physical release, like I know Nintendo is pretty big on that they're basically saying is like, yeah, we could release this digitally and people could download it, but we can't release this physically because we don't want people going to stores or can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or it might be something that, I don't know enough about video game publishing to know what would delay for what they call as logistical issues.
I mean, I don't really know either, to be honest, but I'm still excited for the game regardless of when it comes out. I love the original Last of Us. It was a wonderful, wonderful game. So either way, I think it's a really cool. It's good that they're looking out for people rather than saying we have to get this game out on time, because there are companies that would be like, we have to get this game out on time. So I'm just glad that they're trying to look out for their devs or their publishers or whatever, just trying to make sure everyone's safe. So I'd rather have the game be delayed and people be safe rather than people be put at stake and the game be released on time.
Also, just to throw it out there that I don't know when this game was exactly being planned to release, but right now in the general gaming world, we're kind of, not to say oversaturated, but there are so many high-quality games to play at this moment.
Such as?
Animal Crossing, Doom, Half-Life Alyx, which I guess is a VR game, but it's a huge VR game. Resident Evil 3 just came out.
Oh, yeah.
In 5 days from now, Final Fantasy VII Remake's coming out. And if this game was planned to... So that's a lot, and I guess there's somewhat of a gap between this, the beginning of April and the end of May before a lot more things come out, particularly Nintendo-wise, but if you really want your game to stick out, now's maybe not the best time.
Yeah, that's another good point, I think.
Granted, I don't know how much of that, matters in this, because I come from a perspective of, like, what are the YouTube people playing? And it is inundated with these giant games. So it feels like if this game comes out in July, it's not a lot coming out in July.
Yeah, but here's the other thing, though. Half-Life... No, what? Half-Life. Last of Us 2 Part 2 is such an anticipated title. A lot of, like, Let's Players would drop whatever game they're playing to play it.
I mean, I bet, and I don't know how much these companies rely on Let's Plays, because, to be honest, for their actual market value in selling products, the Let's Plays don't really help, because people who watch that usually aren't playing the game.
Yeah, like, I don't own a VR headset. I can't play Half-Life Alyx, so I'm watching Jacksepticeye play it, you know?
I should do that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've played Half-Life 1 and 2 and Half-Life 2 Episode 2, and a lot of Gmod because that game's hilarious. And, I know the story of Half-Life, and apparently this one is set between Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2. So, I've watched, like, the half of the first part because it's hour-long episodes, and I can't really, I've been sitting at screens all day, almost every day because of my classes. Like, I have to take breaks. So, like, I can follow the story, and I'm enjoying it, and, like, but I saw this other video, that was, like, talking about VR, and it's, like, this game sets a bar for VR like no game ever has before.
Oh, yeah, I mean, like, I think what everyone predicted, this is the Super Mario 64 of VR.
That's a way of putting it, yeah. I agree with that.
I mean, it's going to have its... I bet we'll look back and be like, oh, these, like, weird hiccups, but it's also going to be the thing that people are speed running in 20 years from now.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, I love the idea of VR speedruns, because it's not like you can't... Is their frame perfect? Like, do people just all of a sudden become, like, essentially, like...
Gods?
That's, like, actually a sport.
Yeah. Well, this is a weird full circle we're making.
Like, that's almost like dance training,
Like, eventually there will be VR.
If you become the speedrunner for a VR game where you're
when
moving
that happens
at specific times in a specific way, you're basically
it's literally going to be a sporting
learning
event.
a dance.
Oh my god.
Alright, so we had some internet problems there, but we were already basically done with that conversation, just talking a little bit of Half-Life.
Yeah, and I just was, like, rambling a little bit about how we're going to hit full circle once we hit VR speedruns, and there are going to be actual sporting events that happen because of it, and I just think that's kind of hilarious.
Yeah, it's like a choreographed dance.
Yeah, either way, I think that's just entertaining, and Half-Life Alyx is going to be that game that sets the precedent, and I'm excited to see where VR is going to go from here.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, neither of us have VR stuff and have really ever done it, but it's rad. It's pretty rad.
I mean, once the prices get lower, you bet your ass I'm going to buy a headset.
It's also hard to get computers that run it well. That's the other issue.
Yeah, and I mean, the Oculus is working on... published that, like, standalone headset, didn't they?
It's wireless. It's not standalone.
I see. Okay. But yeah, once like the graphical demands of VR go down, which maybe they will, maybe they won't, or just better computers get less expensive, or VR gets cheaper, I'll get VR. Yep,
definitely. So today we are talking what makes a good video game villain. And I'm going to throw this one to Eli, because I think Eli's got he knows what he's talking about here.
Yeah, and the way I'm going to approach this episode is mainly from a writing perspective, a visual design perspective, and relationship to protagonist and relationship to story motivation perspective. And there are lots of types of villains that really kind of hit those bars and sometimes exceed them, sometimes hit it, and sometimes go below. And I'm going to provide a few examples of, I think, stellar villains. But I want to start off on a little bit of a side note, and this is sort of universal enemies, in a way. Well, like, enemies that wouldn't necessarily classify as a villain, but there is a higher up to them in a lot of, like, horde-based or multi-enemy-based single target games like Monster Hunter or a lot of like Dynasty Warriors-esque games, like ones that don't really have like that have a story, have a final boss, have a main villain, but it's not really like someone that's actively trying to screw you over. It's just how the enemies are. And starting off with Monster Hunter, I've played around too many hours of Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. And the main enemy monster of that game, once you hit the end of the village quests, is the Volstrax. And Volstrax is like the harbinger of doom and will literally destroy everything in its path because it is the Great Comet.
Oh, God.
It's honestly one of the coolest designed monsters in any game. It's a jet fighter dragon, and it is so cool. Like, I'd highly recommend looking at an image of it if you can right now, Jeff, while I'm just sort of like explaining this sort of thing, because Volstrax is a very cool monster. But other than that, you have a bunch of like other minor monsters, and like you keep working up and like fighting these bigger monsters until you get to the end. And then there's also the end of the multiplayer quest line, the hub quests, which is the Atul Ka, which is very cool. And you just kind of, these kinds of villains that are like just like well visually designed, but don't, and can also impact the story in some way, but it's not necessarily like a driving force. Like, you want to kill these monsters because you want to grind it into cool gear, and you want to be a better hunter and get stronger gear, and that's how that game works. Those kinds of villains are fun, especially if they're really well visually designed. But there are like other games like that don't really have monsters that are very well visually designed. And I'm going to reference the sort of Monster Hunter knockoff, as I like to call it, which is Dauntless. Have you heard of Dauntless, Jeffrey?
Yeah, you've talked about it a couple of times.
Yeah, it's basically like if you were... It's like Fortnite to Apex, as Dauntless is to Monster Hunter. In my opinion.
As in, it did it second but got more popular?
Yes. Well, no, Apex came out after Fortnite, but because Fortnite really pioneered the Battle Royale genre. That's another topic for another day.
It's like, I would beg to disagree, but okay.
No, Apex came out later.
I'm saying I don't think Fortnite defines that genre.
No, I'm not saying it defines the genre. It just said it popularized it next to PUBG.
I mean, yeah, as I say, I think PUBG didn't get as viral, but that genre was already so popular before Fortnite even came out.
Yeah, whatever. I think that may be another topic for another day.
You know what? I don't really want to do an episode on Fortnite, if I'm being perfectly honest.
No, I don't either. Good to know we're setting that boundary right here, right now. Excellent. We don't have to talk about that. So let's not. Anyway,
I'll make my point right now. The originator of Battle Royale says Minecraft Hunger Games. Throw in that change my mind petition meme.
I agree with you. I don't have to change your mind.
Got it. It's settled. Final word.
Final word.
Minecraft Hunger Games. Best Battle Royale.
Opinion is fact. Cannot charge me on this. Anyway, so it's like a lot of...
I cannot stress this enough. My opinion is final.
Yeah. But so the thing that makes Monster Hunter so memorable, especially like a lot of people are so opinionated on what like their favorite monster is, and especially with the release of Monster Hunter World and all these cool new monsters getting like introduced to the game or reintroduced to the game, because most recently my favorite monster was added to Monster Hunter World as part of the expansion Iceborne, being the Xenogre, which is basically a giant lightning dog. I love him. He's great. So, like, and now there are a bunch of other classic monsters like that were being added, like Glavenus was added, Elatrion was added, which is another like final boss monster. But it's like a lot of people really want these their favorite monster to be added to Iceborne or added to a future DLC, because the reason these designs are so memorable is because they are so cool, and you get to make these weapons that are based on them, and you get these armors that are also based on their visual designs, and you personalize. But the thing about Dauntless is the monster designs, or the behemoth designs, sorry, they're behemoths, they're bland.
Yeah, this is a different game, guys. It's behemoths.
Yeah, obviously. Just the behemoth designs just feel bland. I don't really feel like I like a lot of them, and I've played like a solid amount of time into Dauntless before realizing, Monster Hunter's a better game. And I own Monster Hunter World, and obviously I've played Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate quite a bit. But yeah, so I just want to go off on a side tangent and talk about like environment-based villains and ones that like you sort of have to grind through.
Yeah, I mean we're talking the villain types here that aren't, you know, they don't have like a personal beef against your character. These are just sort of essentially like killing really hard at, you know, really big animals in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a World of Warcraft raid, you know?
Yeah, or to be honest, most of the enemies in any RPG that aren't like your main final boss.
Exactly. You know, these are all miniature bosses, and I talked about Volstrax and Altoka being like the bosses of the game. And yes, they were striking visually and had some great story to them, but they weren't necessarily a driving force driving you forward. You wanted to save people by hunting all the monsters, not just those specific two.
And it's not like this monster has some specific vendetta against the town. It's just it's a freaking monster.
Exactly. So I just wanted to like, and those kinds of things are great. Especially if they're well visually designed. There's a reason most people, when they play Monster Hunter, have a favorite monster.
Yeah, I mean, and there are a ton of other games that do this well, even if that's not the particular, like, point of the game. Even just things like the Zelda and the Mario franchise have, one of the reasons that they've, like, sustained so well is, like, the well-known enemy design. Or, you know, other RPGs like Dragon Quest with the slimes. I mean, those are incredibly well designed and iconic that even though the slime never really has anything to do with the plot of the game, it's become recognizable.
Yeah, it's a franchise thing.
And even games like Xenoblade, which I'll use a lot because it is sort of a more well thought out monsters, that has a very specific like enemies against your player, but then just like the enemies that exist in the world around you, which aren't particular to you, are also like fantastic in that game and very memorable for creating that world overall, which is a huge part of a monster design that is important, is how does that monster fit into the world and make that world of the game you're playing memorable. And Monster Hunter, though I haven't played a lot of it, has such a strong style for all of its monsters that really cement what the world is and bring the whole world together in that way.
Exactly, yeah. But the villains we're talking about are the villains that really impact the story. And I have one villain that is the gold standard, which I will talk about a little bit later. But I want to pick your brain a little bit, Jeffrey.
Yes.
How do you think Metal Face sort of fits into this whole dynamic of like what makes a good villain?
Well, obviously I haven't played every game, and a lot of the games that I've played are in the Nintendo realm, and most Nintendo villains aren't the most scary things. I mean, half the time Bowser's driving a go-kart and playing golf.
Yeah.
And Nintendo does a lot with their villains that don't really like have a lot to do with the story, because a lot of their main games don't have a super strong story. And also those are the ones I've played, you know. I haven't played through many of the Metroid games, which has more of that sense, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But Metal Face to me is really great in a lot of facets, and I will keep this as spoiler free as I can. One, I think, which is the most important thing for a lot of, well, I think one of the best things about Metal Face is that he really feels like an enemy. And the reason I say that is so many Nintendo games, and I'm particularly aware of this having playing through Omega Ruby right now, Pokemon, that in that game, like Pokemon, your enemies like have a weird amount of respect for you and will like give you items, which doesn't make a lot of sense if you want to be like feel like a challenge by the enemy and trying to overcome them. But Metal Face, he hates you, and obviously like
boy.
And obviously he does a lot of he leaves when it's convenient for you to survive, but it's not like he's, it's not like something in Pokemon where they're like, oh, you've defeated me and I'm honorable, so here is a TM or something. Nah, he fucking kills your best friend. Like, in front of you. So, that level that I think is really important for any sort of real strong villain is to actually have not only, like, disdain towards like in general, but specifically disdain towards you as the main character.
Yeah, totally. And that sort of gets me into another villain that I wanted to talk about, which is another Pokemon villain, actually, from the Sun and Moon games, and that would be Guzma. As well as at this point, the game's old, like, sorry. Because Definitive Edition is coming out, and Sun and Moon is an older game, I'm not going to care about spoilers. But the eventual villain that is revealed is Director Lusamine of the Aether Foundation, and Guzma teams up with you to take her down.
Yeah, I don't really think people... Is Pokemon... I feel like Pokemon spoilers an oxymoron.
That's true.
Hey, yeah. Eli, did you know that at the end of Omega Ruby, you catch Groudon?
Wow.
It's almost like he's on the box.
Wow. But but yeah, but thought it was kind of cool because, you know, Team Skull, and you always think the Pokemon team is like, oh, they're the bad guys, we gotta beat the crap out of them. But the thing is, Team Skull is just a bunch of morons. Guzma's an idiot. He's so dumb. But it's endearing because you watch him try to do his best, but then you realize that he's not the real leader. And you meet Lusamine really early into the game, and you think like, oh, she's kind of creepy, but like she's trying to save Pokemon, so I guess she's chill. And then you meet Guzma, who's trying to like take Pokemon, like do bad things to them, and like blah blah blah, regular Pokemon team stuff, except for Sword and Shield. Fuck Team Yell, they're so boring. Anyway, so you keep fighting Team Skull and you thwart their plans every time, you know, like classic Pokemon. But the twist that you don't see coming, is that Lusamine is trying to unleash the Ultra Beasts and sort of take over the world that way. So then Guzma realizes, like, wait, this is kind of fucked up. I'm going to team up with the hero and take you down. And that was just a cool, like, I think another category of villain that is kind of cool to, like, bring in is, like, because Lusamine hates you. Guzma hates you. But Guzma realizes there's a greater good, and you eventually befriend Guzma because you have a common enemy.
Yeah, I think that's a huge, important thing with believable villains that aren't just, like, a scary monster. Is the motivation behind what the character's doing. And I'm not, you know, I can bring this back to Xenoblade, but I'm not going to spoil it. But as you develop more into, you see more of the villains of that game, you understand that this isn't some just asshole that hates you. It's actually like they have a very well thought out reason for doing the things they're doing and are doing it for a very specific reason. And you sort of understand that through your journey, like why what seems like is a giant mystery of what you're fighting in the beginning actually makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm bringing it back to Guzma for a second because I'm agreeing with you on the motivation thing. The reason Guzma actually is helping Lusamine is because he's helping homeless children. All the members of Team Skull are homeless, and he helps them and gives them a place to live and feeds them by helping Lusamine. That's his motivation. Lusamine's just in it because she's bad to the core and wants to take over the world.
Mm-hmm. But what do you think about that with a character that just is like, the explanation is just like what greed or inherent evil? Like, how do you feel about enemies that just have that as their reason?
It makes for an easy target. It makes you it less highlights the villain and more highlights the characters that you're interacting with for the common enemy. And I think that can lead to some really strong partners in writing for games, but it leaves the villain lackluster, but it still gives you a feeling like rewarded when you beat the villain with the friends you've made along the way. And I'm going to reference Dragon Quest here. Dragon Quest is known for having like the "I am the all-powerful villain, I will beat you" sort of thing. Like that's just the trope of the series, you know?
Yes, Dragon Quest has defined every JRPG like trope out there, basically.
Exactly. Do you care about spoilers for Dragon Quest XI? Like, how do you feel about that?
You know, I'm still in the middle of that game, and I haven't even gotten to the tree yet. So I'm gonna say let's keep this a spoiler-free podcast, except for something like Pokemon, because no one gives a shit.
Okay, fair. But
I mean, that's why I'm not spoiling Xenoblade for you.
Yeah, exactly. That's fair. So the main villain of Dragon Quest is like, the big bad, ultimate bad, blah, you know.
Well, I'll say, wait, before you go on, I'll just say is I think what we're saying is when both of us finish those respective games, we're gonna do a follow-up episode, which is complete spoilers.
Oh, totally. And we will tag it in the episode, spoilers, spoilers, and more spoilers.
Yeah, that'll be like a, I don't know. I'd say bonus episode, but I think it's just it would just be an episode because I think you need to have people watching your stuff before you make bonus content.
Fair. I think yeah, that's a good thing.
So I think that would just be regular content.
Yes. Anyway, so like because you're fighting the big bad, ultimate big bad blah, it really highlights the writing of the side characters and not your protagonist. Because the thing about Dragon Quest and a big JRPG trope is the blank protagonist, self-insertion.
Yeah.
You're allowed to self-insert in the story, but that also helps highlight the really great writing of your partners. Like Sylvando has fantastic writing. He's a great character. Eric has a really tragic past, and then you help him like get over it. Who else? Jade and Rab have some really cool reveals about them. You'll find that out later. Have you met Jade and Rab yet?
They're not even in my party. They're not in my party yet.
Yeah, you'll meet Jade and Rab in a really cool arc. Who am I missing? Oh, Serena and Veronica have a beautiful story attached to them. And I'm not going to spoil the last character you get because that's big spoiler. So I won't say anything about that guy. But yeah, like the thing about having a generic big bad blah is the fact that you can highlight other aspects of the story that are also worthy of attention.
Yeah, it's definitely the case, and I think that combining parts of that are really in a story of a big bad enemy that's just bad for the sake of being bad, with also some level of like outside motivation, and having variety between the two really makes for a compelling story. And I think that having that big bad just evil presence is particularly valuable in the beginning parts of games when you need to sort of rally your troops behind something and get people, and like you get to learn essentially, which in most of these games is like the team you have, like getting to learn those other characters before you dive into the issue of like where the enemy's coming from.
Yeah. And the thing about that I really like about Dragon Quest specifically is that there's not just the big bad blah, there is like one of his subordinates that is like a really well written villain. Like it's not just focusing, yes, you have to take down the big bad blah, but there's also the plot with that one subordinate that he has that is really cool. And obviously I'm not going to say the name for sake of spoilers, but it's really compelling because not only do you get this one somewhat side plot, it's still relevant to the main plot, but somewhat side plot with this one character, and you also get to know your companions more. It really meshes together a really well-written story in a really well-developed world. So sometimes, to make a good villain, it doesn't have to be the focus of the game.
Yeah, I think a lot of... Well, the main villain also like can change a lot during the game, and you fall into different places. So like beginning game, having just some of a general enemy works well for just, especially like if you don't really know what you're going against, that call to adventure is really good. And this is more in an RPG style game, but I think we're generally talking here like heavily story driven games. We're not talking about Mario.
No. Like, so yes, great visual design. Do I really care about Bowser? No.
So you can like start off really well with like the big bad force of evil that can like draw you in, and that's really helpful. But then at a certain point in the story, you do want to get to know more of like who are you fighting, why are you fighting, why are they against you, and understand those things. And sometimes the story can sort of end kind of there, or find another greater evil like above them, and you sort of get like levels of like sort of the hierarchy of command or villain. And I think that a great story relies on understanding how and when those beats should change.
Yeah, and Dragon Quest does do that as well, but obviously I'm not going to say more than that.
Well, I think any great RPG has to have those sort of story beats, because this isn't like and the reason I say that particularly in something like these long form games, it's like if you're gonna lose motivation if you don't have a somewhat changing objective, you know.
Yeah, fair.
And unlike some, a movie's 3 hours, an RPG is 100
True.
or 50.
50 to 60 to 100, who knows?
Let's say, yeah, okay, call it 50. That's still a lot, and I get it. Most of it's gameplay, not story, but there's a lot of. I mean, I'll tell you, like the story for Xenoblade is like of just cutscenes is over 10 hours.
I'd say the same.
It's a season. It's like a full season of a show, you know. So you need you can't, what? Yeah, your D&D game can follow just one enemy, but a call to adventure themed story, it can't just sustain on this call to fight one enemy the entire time. You can't fill that much space.
It's difficult. It's incredibly difficult.
And that's why having those varieties, and also why like mini bosses or both of those have to be things.
Yeah.
How do you think Dragon Quest does in, what is a really important thing in story development in regards to villains, which is, keeping that level of distance between your main villain through the sort of chapters of the story, but also having enough of a reminder that they're there.
I'm going to reference Mega Man here in that regard. Because it's specifically Mega Man X. How you start out fighting, God, I can't remember his name, but it's that, like, subordinate of the Sigma, and then you realize you're not strong enough, Zero comes in, he helps you, yada, yada, yada. And you are reminded of, like, oh my god, I couldn't beat that guy, and he shows up a lot. Like, he'll show up sometimes in the middle of stages, or you'll see him and, like, referenced in the background. Like, he is a constant reminder that you couldn't beat this guy, but now you have to go fight the Robot Master so you can finally beat him. So, like, having that reminder of, like, I need to beat this thing is a really good driving force of the game, especially if it directly affects your character. In this case, directly affecting X, who has to fight him and then fight Sigma to win, to save the world. So
I think that's because one of the video games have a different, villains in video games need to take on a slightly different role than, say, a villain in a pre-written story, because since you, the player, become the protagonist in a sense, they need to become the motivation for you to keep playing. I mean, obviously in a game, your motivation to keep playing is that the game is fun, like, not always necessarily the story, but that's an added role that the villain needs to play, and on, like, a very literal sense, like, because you have to make the player feel, I want to beat that guy, as opposed to just, like, saying your main character is, like, says, I want to beat that guy, Those are very different things, and that's what, like, Mega Man in that game does so well, is, like, this constant reminder that you aren't or weren't strong enough to beat this enemy, which drives you even, more and more every time you see them to wanting to get that much better. And I think not just Mega Man, but I think any great story has that mysterious, like, not beatable thing that you need to or want to or know there's a way you can beat.
Totally. And I wanted to hold this off to the last part of the episode, but I feel like I have to talk about it. The perfect integration of great writing, great visual design, and constant reminder that you have to beat them is none other than Borderlands 2's Handsome Jack. In my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinions too, the best villain in gaming history.
All right, I'll counter you with Metalface, because I think that Metalface can go toe-to-toe with just about any villain out there. So why don't you lay out your categories for me, explain your case, and I'll counter back with mine.
Okay, so I'm going to start with one of the first categories I talked about, visual design. Handsome Jack, that iconic mask, that iconic smug-ass grin and pose, the heterochromia of his eyes, the classic slick-back hair and the Hyperion t-shirt over the suit jacket. You look at Handsome Jack and you know the cell shading and the art style, everything folds in and you know that's Handsome Jack. I fucking hate him or I fucking love him. So the visual design and the visual clarity of his design, as, like, he hides behind who he is. He is, and this is explained more in the pre-sequel games, how he got to who he is, but just the development and everything that he has going for him, it's all bubbling on the surface. You hate him, you want to end him, but there's something about him that's so fucking charming, and you can't get rid of the fact that you love to hate him and hate to love him. And that's all communicated through visual design.
Yeah, you're bringing up a really a good point, which can come through in multiple ways, which is the sort of hate to love and love to hate, which is like they're intrigued enough to want to know, but you still hate him so much, that conflict that it brings about within you, as opposed to Bowser, who you're just you stole my girlfriend, you're bad. I gotta ask perhaps a dumb question for someone who doesn't play Borderlands. Is he wearing a mask?
Yes, and the story behind the mask is his face was physically horribly scarred, because he was gaining knowledge from a vault, and that was giving him everything he needed to know to basically conquer the galaxy in a massive corporate empire. Mm-hmm. And then when the vault sigil was right in front of his face, transferring the knowledge into his brain, one of the vault hunters from this first game, Lilith, punched the symbol, and it branded his face horribly, ripped out one of his eyes, and totally just disfigured him horribly. And so he literally had a mask welded to his face, one that moves with his mouth and stuff because future technology. Mm-hmm. And he rebranded, instead of just being Jack, he was now Handsome Jack because he could never be ugly.
Yeah, and I think that one of the great features of something like that, particularly a mask, and why so many villains wear a mask, is the mystery behind what it is, or who they are. And obviously, Handsome Jack, okay, you're hiding a scar, that's one thing, but some of the best villains of all time, and the most iconic ones, have that identity mystery. I mean, Darth Vader.
Prime example.
And I would say that on a that's another, that is similarly what makes Metalface so great, is that even in his visual design, you just don't understand why you can't, why he is the way he is. And because when you meet him, you already know generally how to beat Mechon, but this is the first one you see with a face, which, by the way, for just pure creepy faces, I don't think there's a more creepy one than Metalface.
I'd argue some of the zombies in Last of Us have pretty horrifying faces, but
okay,
I'll grant you that.
I guess I mean a face that's I don't mean creepy as in smile.jpg is really creepy. I meant not horribly disfigured, but just for the as a starting point, something that didn't get fucked up later. That's what he's they built him to look that way.
That's true. That's fair.
That is, it's a horrifying thing, and but it's also this you don't know what's behind. It looks like a mask, and you also don't know what's behind the character. And in all of Metalface's visual design is you don't understand why you can't do the things you can. They talk about there's light, in Metalface's armor, and that's the only the faces have that, and you can't beat that for some reason. And that design choice so strongly prevents you from understanding that character on a pure curiosity level, that I think on a visual design standpoint that makes him incredibly interesting for the character's sake.
Right. And something I neglected to mention, in terms of Jack's visual design, when you do beat him at the end of the game and you get his mask, you see his face on the ground, you see his dead body, and you see that scar. And for the pre-sequel, you're wait, what happened to him? There was that mystery, as you don't know his past. You don't know what you of course reveal bits of his past, with other aspects of the game. And since this is literally an 8-year-old game, I don't care about spoilers. You'll enjoy the game if you play it, spoiler knowing or not, I think. Mm-hmm. But there's, and that sort of leads me into the writing of the character. Handsome Jack is brilliantly written. All of his dialogue is incredibly funny. A majority of his dialogue is very funny, but when he gets serious, you get scared. You are scared of him and what he can do. Like, yes, he's a CEO of like one of the galaxy's biggest weapon manufacturers, so of course he has access to unlimited funds, unlimited resources. He has a giant orbital bombardment cannon in a giant H-shaped fucking station. He can do whatever he wants, and you can't stop him. But of course, and he's really snarky and whatever, until one major turning point of the game, and that is the bunker boss fight. After you defeat the bunker, which is literally just a giant robot, you go into Control Core Angel, and this whole time in the game, you're being deceived by this weird holographic thing called Angel. She calls herself Angel. And what you don't realize is that's Handsome Jack's daughter, not an AI. And she's literally begging you to kill her as you're inside the control core, so of course you have to honor her, because she's been helping you and deceiving you both ways in the game. And you just you have to kill her. The game doesn't really give you many other options. And so you kill her, and that's when Jack takes the turning point from whimsical, kind of funny asshole to oh god, I'm fucking scared of you. I don't want to know what you can do to me. And so in that shift, you still love to hate him because he's still an enjoyable asshole, and he still has funny dialogue, but you have that underlying feeling of, I may have just fucked up everything with this one action. And that writing and that sort of conflict you have, because you need to beat him. He's so lovable, but his dark side is darker than you could have imagined. Makes for a really compelling and really well-written character that you enjoy hunting down. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, totally. The huge part that makes a villain, in the writing of a villain that makes it engaging is the conflict you have between, in that character. I think that any character, a static character is really boring. And great villains in video games can really easily fall into just being bad for the sake of being bad or whatever, and don't have that side to them. One of the reasons that people even the Mario RPGs so much, for example, is that they turn Bowser, who's just bad, and make him funny and in a weird way, or add more character traits to villains, and that's what engages you with the story, and also engages you in the story in that way. Metalface is definitely different in the writing, because Metalface has, because again, I think a big important thing in a villain, especially in a video game, is the mystery behind who this person or what this thing is. Because with most again, with an an adventure story, a hero's call to action, you need to discover what you're doing, because just that's how a villain structure in a game where you eventually have to beat the character works. And Metalface does it very differently, because Metalface is never funny, or you never that Metalface. But there's so much mystery behind what Metalface is. I think one of the best lines from Xenoblade, and I don't know when Dunban says it, but he says to Metalface, he goes, "What and who are you?" And I think that perfectly sums up in the writing, of Metalface, that he knows weirdly a lot about Shulk and the entire party, and recognizes the characters, but you never learn anything about him, which always makes him feel that much bigger and badder and ahead of you, especially when you always seem to run into him when you already think you've defeated something, and then he's just there.
Mm-hmm.
And even several game mechanic things kind of get introduced because Metalface acknowledges it. In one of the fights you have with Metalface, it gets sworn off because a Telethia interrupts it, and Metalface goes "What is this, a Telethia?" Meanwhile, you as a player, and also all of the playable characters you have in your party, have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
And that's really, and I think that's really great. But also the other thing with the writing of Metalface, which I think is the best part, is that he has the knack of just getting right under your skin and like pissing you off so like viscerally. And I don't know to what degree Handsome Jack does this, but
Oh, he does it very well. He knows exactly what to say to get you under your skin.
and to like a level of mocking and also disrespecting you. I don't. A lot of people don't realize that Metal Face actually does call Shulk the Monado Boy. But like, the tone in which Metal Face says the Monado Boy, which I'm not doing a good impression of, is so demeaning to like Shulk as a character, and just shows that like Metal Face has literally no respect for him. Like he calls him like a bug and just has such great like words to just show how little he cares about you.
Right.
And I mean, he shows it off immediately by like killing your like best friend and like killing them casually. Like Metal Face kills Fiora just by like, oh, you're here, stab, and then turns around. So that level of just like disrespecting your character in any way, I think makes a villain really strong from the perspective of you wanting to beat them up.
I can name a few examples of how Handsome Jack does the same exact thing. So in one of the later quests of the game, there's literally a quest called Kill Yourself. It is a quest from Handsome Jack for you. He goes, the first line of this quest, and it is ingrained into the mind of almost every person that has played Borderlands 2, he literally just goes, I will pay you to kill yourself. And that's literally the first line of that quest.
There's just no respect for you, like, in that quest. It's great.
Yeah. And he basically, like, and you, of course, have the option to kill yourself or don't kill yourself. If you kill yourself, he starts laughing as like, holy shit, you actually did that? You are such a fucking sellout, you absolute buffoon. Like, he just lays into you. And then if you click, like, the suicide hotline button, you get a mocking message from the suicide hotline being like, wow, you couldn't follow through, you're such a dick, or something like that. It's like, wow. Either way, he finds a way to mock you and just, like, lay into you. And not to mention the deception aspect of Handsome Jack. So he has another quest around the same part of the game where it's like, it's called like going to grandma's house or something. And he's like, look, man, I'm really worried about my grandma. Can you please do me a favor? I need you to help me out. And so you like travel up to the grandma's house and like, he's like talking about all these great memories of her and like whatever. When in reality, his grandma was actually the one who raised him and she abused the crap out of him. So it's like, you know, and so you get to the house and then you like kill a bunch of bandits that are inside the house. Meanwhile, Handsome Jack's talking to you. He's like, oh my God, is she okay? Please check on her. And he's like freaking out. And then you find like the bloody buzz axe embedded into the bed and a blood stain everywhere. And after the bandits he killed, then you just hear him start to laugh. And he's like, hey, thanks for killing those bandits. Now I don't have to pay them for killing my grandma. Bye. Yeah, and it's like, you're just like, I just did that for you? I hate you. Like, the thing is that he said so endearingly that you can't help but say, like, that's totally something he would do. But you're also just like, you feel like you just had like a nail. Or no, I can think of a better analogy that's going to make you want to like cringe really hard. It's like he puts the nail underneath your toenail and then mashes your foot against the door.
No, he hides a nail under your toenail, then invites you to play a game of soccer with him.
Yeah, that's Handsome Jack. And it's brilliantly written because it's like, oh my God, I hate you, but of course you would do this.
Yeah, I think maybe... I think in movies or TV shows this isn't as much of the case, but in a video game, when it's having the villain like personally just make you feel like garbage, like get that revenge complex in you. That's one of the things I love about the story of Xenoblade is that obviously it develops as it goes on, but a lot of RPGs or even things like this just start with this like, oh, you're blessed with some great power, go off and do a thing. Whereas Xenoblade, you're just a dude, and you're like... He literally goes, I'm going to kill that Mechon because of what he did to Fiora. And Ryan's just like, yeah, let's do it. And I think that setting up making a villain so strong at the beginning of the game that you can go off and just say, I just want to punch him in the face. And you know what? Like, for a game like Xenoblade, that's enough for you to be like, yeah, I want him dead.
Exactly. And Jack does the same thing. In one of like the first like Echo Log missions in the game, you learn of like one of the people from Borderlands 1, like the leader of the like the Atlas Resistance, Helena Pierce. You learn about her, like what happened to her. And it turns out Handsome Jack, like she commandeered a train, one of Jack's trains, to like ship materials to refugees or whatever. And Jack, of course, invades the train. And he's like, and Helena Pierce has like a horribly disfigured face because of like a ring her husband gave her that like attracted wild beasts, and like, you know, they killed her husband, but she was able to escape.
Yeah.
And so, like, he's like, that is a heartbreaker, but you hear a gunshot, you got something in common with him now, at least. It's like, he just shot her in cold blood. Totally cold blood. And then it makes you think, like, oh my, like, and you just hear him, like, have all this, like, really endearing dialogue before it's like, oh my god, you actually survived the train crash? Holy crap. Guess what? I just bought a pony made of diamonds. His name is Butt Stallion. Like, but then you realize he is a cold-blooded killer. And you're like, he's funny, but I don't trust him. I've never trusted him because, first off, in the intro sequence of the game, he tried to kill me. You know, it's like, and you're given a very good reason for wanting to hunt him down based on those audio logs, especially if you played the first Borderlands game. But it's also just like, even if you didn't, like, I didn't play the first Borderlands game before I played Borderlands 2, I was still like, holy crap, this guy's no joke. Like, I can see why we're trying to take him down.
Yeah, I think that's a very underrated aspect of a lot of villains when they're written is you as a player need to be like, why, you know, is that thing is like, I get why I need to take him down. So many villains in video games, you're not really sure why you're like, why do I need to take this guy down? Like, what is he doing? What's the problem?
Exactly.
Sometimes, and having that level of just being like, yeah, no, I'm on the same page here. You know, I don't want to say it's as simple as like make your villain like a clever asshole, but kind of in video games for certain genres that really works pretty well. Obviously, you can't just say that. You need to like execute in a really well done way, but there's some level of that you need to have.
Oh, totally. And this makes me think about, oh god, I just had the other game in my head as like okay, and I'm going to reference Doom a little bit here, and specifically Doom 2016. Like, you kill demons, but there's some clever underworkings. It's like, the game is about killing demons. Like, let's not kid ourselves. That's the game. And, like, you don't really play it for the story. And Doom 2016 is like, oh, there's this one big evil demon. I gotta go kill the big evil demon, rip and tear until it's done, blah, blah, blah. But then you realize there's somebody working behind the scenes that's, like, someone you trusted from the beginning of the game. And they actually come back and do Eternal, fun fact. That's pretty cool. And I won't say who, because I know you want to play Eternal. And chances are you'll probably play Doom 2016 as well, so I don't want to spoil anything for you. But it's just like, very simple. It's like, I am the Slayer. I will kill demons. And so you do that, and you sort of beat the game in your own way by ripping and tearing until it's done. But there's also like a lot of story that really flies under the radar. But you still have a strong motivation. And this also is, I'm going to reference Metroid as well, because playing the game on a surface level, at least the original side-scrollers, once you get into like the Prime series, then you have like a really strong motivation as to why you need to bring Phase on and like the Space Pirates down. But in the original games, you're just like, oh, I am platforming, I am solving puzzles, I am shooting aliens, that's the game. But once you get into the lore and you realize why Samus wants to kill Ridley, then it's like, oh, it's really good. So, you know, sometimes surface level, that's what a game is and what a villain is. But once you really get into the, like, if you are so engaged by the gameplay and the character's design, like, sometimes having 2 out of the 3 is good, but having 3 out of the 3 is perfect. And that's what I think both Metalface and Jack do to a very large extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much of games is about player like, the entire, like, way to make a good game is to have the player engaged in some way. And you can do it in a ton of different ways, but the most important way is obviously going to be gameplay. So, you know, if you're a developer, make your game play well, number one. But even games that play great, you know, I know for my own sake, there are games that play great, but sometimes they just don't stick with me, and then I get partway through the game and I stop playing, and then I have a hard time getting back into it. But if you make your villain, and there's other ways to do it besides a really good villain, but if you have like that villain that just like you're like, I need to finish this guy off, that can really keep somebody stuck in your game.
Oh yeah, and I think that's exactly what Jack and Metalface exemplify, and really, like, it's hard to say, like, yes, Metalface might be your favorite villain, and Handsome Jack is my favorite villain, but they both fulfill the same aspect of a game that I feel is necessary for a game to succeed. So, like, they both fulfill the same niche in different ways, but still have the same end goal.
Yeah, and also like a villain can't exist without like the world and the story and the characters around it to be good on its own, you know. So much of why Metalface is good has to do with the other characters in the game besides Shulk and how the world itself works. Similarly, and I'm sure the same is true about Handsome Jack.
Oh yeah, like, there's so much lore, and like all the characters are well written and funny, but like they also have their serious sides, and you know, all that fun stuff. Like Pandora as a world, especially in Borderlands 2, because it was kind of gypped in Borderlands 3, and Borderlands 1 is like a very novel game, but like it's not until you get really late in the game does the story really kick in, or it's like easier to follow in a way. But the thing that Borderlands 2 develops about Pandora is that it's a massive planet, and it's a huge world that you can explore, and Handsome Jack explains it the whole way, and you're just like, oh my god, shut the fuck up, I want to kill you, but I also keep talking, you're funny as hell.
Yeah, there's some level in, I think, any good video game villain, which is like you want them to go away, but you love it when they're there.
I think Metalface does that really well, because his visual design is so cool. Like, anytime,
yeah,
when we were playing Xenoblade, whenever Metalface showed up, I was like, oh yeah, it's the dude, he's so cool, you know? Like, I think Metalface is badass. He is cool as hell. His voice acting is fantastic. His visual design communicates exactly what you want it to. The long bladed fingers, it's like he won't hesitate to kill. The eerie face, there's a mystery there. The glowing red energy on his back, there's something different about him. His visual design is so specific that it's like you can't help but be engaged solely by his visual design. With Jack, it's how his character is explained. It's how you learn more about him as the game goes on, especially immediately with, like, you know, he's making jokes about his diamond pony while you just listen to a voice log of him killing a woman that you knew in cold blood.
Yeah, you need to have some, I think you need to have some level of dichotomy, you know? Like, even though they're not really the villains, but like, you see people, you know, I haven't experienced this directly, but like when people get mad at your rival in Pokemon, how much that takes somebody out of the experience because for whatever reason. And that shows you how important it is to have, like, even if it's the person that you want to defeat as much as possible, how you kind of want them to be there.
Yeah, like, a lot of people get mad at Hop, specifically the newest rival in Sword and Shield, because he's like, oh my god, he's so annoying. Like, no, Hop was one of my favorite rivals in a lot of generations. He was the most engaging because, you know, he had a character. A lot of times rivals are like, I'm gonna be better than you, yeah. Whereas Hop's like, I'm gonna be better than you so I can live up to what my brother wants for me. There's a different motivation than just, I need to be better than you.
But also, similarly, what I think he struggles with, and like, I like Hop, but I think what the issue becomes is, you know, a character who, I mean, doesn't have great visual design. He's just a dude. And is written pretty well, but not spectacularly. And what you end up with as a character is like, yes, he has interesting aspects and is more fleshed out and more developed, but ultimately he's not engaging to the same level. And some people are more engaged with him than not, but I don't think there's anyone out there that looks at Handsome Jack or Metalface and is like, and just really wants nothing to do with them.
That's fair. Yeah.
There's something about them that just engages you, and I think a lot of it has to do with, it's a combination of like clever writing and like design and how they interact with you in a gameplay. And like, look, Hop doesn't have a lot of great things going for him, especially being I bet if he had voice acting, he would be more engageable, you know?
Yeah, and that's also what I'm gonna a little bit more about Dragon Quest, because a lot of Dragon Quest is fully voice acted. I think all of it is, really. At least all
Except for Hero. Hero doesn't talk.
yeah, a majority, if not all of the dialogue is completely voice acted. You know, or at least all the important dialogue, I should say, because there is a lot of like, you know, NPC dialogue that you just
Or the cutscene ends and it's the please walk to the left.
yeah, that sort of thing. But still, it's like, you know, you still have the dialogue aspect of it, and that's what made all the side characters or all the party characters and, you know, enemies in Dragon Quest so engaging for me, is because you still hear who they are. There's a lot more that can be told in the human voice, and especially because like our brains are more in tune to sound in that way. Like we can read emotion off of how somebody's talking. You know, that's what makes like characters that don't speak that way kind of interesting. Is like, oh, we can't pin them down, like Darth Vader, the masked character that never speaks in anything but a deep, evil voice, and you can't really tell what he's feeling until you take the mask off. You know? A lot of like voice acting cues can really cue us into how a character is, and both Metalface and Handsome Jack are excellently voiced characters. Like such stark, like you were saying, like you can tell like just the delicious mockery that both Handsome Jack and Metalface has. Monado boy, or you know, Handsome Jack just, I will pay you to kill yourself, you know, that sort of thing. So you can tell so much of who they are by their voice. So voice acting, I think, is also pretty crucial, and that's why Hop doesn't really. I love Hop. I think he's one of the more engaging rivals of the previous generations, but the voice is missing.
Yeah, and it's a voice acting that doesn't give everything away, which is just like, you know, give it up to the voice actors. Who do a great job, but it's, you know, with both characters, they say a thing and you're like, Jesus Christ, but you're like, I don't know what you're thinking. I just know what you're saying.
Right. And that leads you to theorize about their motivations, and then you get more engaged because you want to know.
Well, also you become you have a level of like afraid because you don't know what you're messing with.
Exactly.
Which is also a huge part, I think, of like a villain game design. Is like, oh, I don't know what I'm getting into here.
True. And that's also like
and some of the fears, like, what are they gonna do? Like, you know, it's a game, and you know you're not just gonna get like you're not gonna die. Like, it's a game. You don't just not win at some point. But like, what are they gonna do to this world that I'm growing and the characters I like and to all these connections? Which I guess it's true with any villain in any media, but it somehow can feel even more personal in a video game.
Because you are inserting yourself into the protagonist's role, so you feel like everything is directly affecting you. That's good writing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
definitely.
And I think Xenoblade does that to a tremendous degree with all the world building that you have so early into the game. You know, you learn so much about, like, even in the intro sequence, you learn about how the world was formed, and then you see, like, you know, the Battle of Sword, or like parts of the Battle of Sword Valley with, like, you know, Dunban wielding the Monado and how that hurt him. You know, you learn all these things so early in the game. You're suddenly engaged and immersed in this world, and then you show up on the glacier in Borderlands 2, and you're just like, after surviving this train crash and trying to be murdered, and then you wake up to Claptrap, who I don't like Claptrap. He's so annoying. Probably because I played the game so many times. Like, yes, Claptrap is funny because he's so annoying. You're just like, shut the fuck up, please. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, but but it's a good point that it's very easy for a villain to just be like, shut up. And these two villains are not, you never like stop talking to them. You want them to stop, but you want to keep listening.
Exactly. And I don't know what the turning point for Metalface is. I don't know what the big reveal about Metalface is, but Handsome Jack's turning point was such a crucial point in the story. When, like, oh, you thought you shouldn't be messing with him, but you want to keep poking to see how far you can go. That's the point where you're like, I should stop. I've gone too far. You know, like, I did kill your daughter, and he retaliates by killing the leader of the resistance right in front of you. Mm-hmm. It's like a cutscene, and you literally see like Roland, who is like the leader of the resistance and the character in the first game that you can play as. He's like great, we took down Control Tower Angel, now we're just one step closer to taking down Jack, and then you see a bullet hole appear in his chest. You're like, oh my god.
Yeah, your evolution in fighting and getting to understand Metal-Face as a character drastically changes how the game of Xenoblade like functions.
Yeah.
And like it changes, like, not to say like act 2 of the game, but like the way that you think about the world changes in your understanding of Metal-Face. And I think that level of mystery in a character is huge to keep you wanting to, in games that have big expansive worlds, keeps you to wanting to understand, develop, and like wanting to see how this world really does work.
Right. So I guess what we're trying to say here, and we're hitting an hour and a half, so I think it might be a good time to wrap up. But what we're trying to say here is one of the really great things that can make a game really great, and it doesn't have to be just this one part of a game, but a great villain can lead to a great story. And we have 2 villains here that are our favorites that really exemplify what we want out of our antagonists. We don't want the big bad blah, and we don't want all these random enemies that we just have to plow through to win the game. We want something that we can connect with and we don't understand, that really drives us as a player to want to know more about the world. What are we fighting? What is the motivation? Whether it's a zanier character like Jack or a more serious, gritty character like Metal-Face, these are 2 opposites of the same coin, 2 sides of the same coin, really.
Yeah, in games where the story and the world are integral to the experience of the game, the villain is incredibly important, not only as to the story as its own, obviously, but even more so in video games as the player's motivation to wanting to keep engaging in this world and understand more. Because ultimately, in something like a movie, you just sit back and it happens. But in a game, if you want to understand more of the story, you got to explore and talk, and it takes more time and effort for you. So having that villain as a part of that story allows for the player to engage in the world in a more fulfilling way.
And when you feel fulfilled as a player, you've made a good game.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's just our way in on some great villains. I think what I didn't really get to talk enough about was Ridley and that sort of mystery aspect pushed farther, where it's you don't know anything. But Ridley, I think, is really cool because, great visual design, obviously incredibly fun boss fights. Whenever you're fighting Ridley, I've had the most fun I've had in a lot of games because he's hard and he's ugh, I want to do it again. But where you don't know much about the world, but there's still such strong visual clarity, you can succeed the same way, But when you feel fulfilled as a player and when you've written something so complex and diverse into the same world, you finish the game and you feel cathartic when you've beaten that final boss. And you're just wow, I feel like the hero, like I should be in almost any game you play. Unless it's a game where it's constantly subverting expectations in the story, where it's you are the hero, but you're the villain. Whatever.
Undertale?
Basically, yeah. But that's also... Undertale's cool for a bunch of different reasons. Because, should we talk about Flowey for a bit?
I don't know anything about Undertale, and I'm trying to keep it that way until I decide to play it.
Okay, then I won't say anything to you, but oh my god.
Well, on that note, this has been the 2 other guys. I'm Jeffrey, one of the... I haven't figured out what to do with this outro. I'm Jeffrey, one of the other guys.
I'm Eli, the other guy.
Bye, wow.
Bye.